that has been my journey of 2022, is in finding myself. I've been trying to find what of those core values that I was raised in are actually mine. Yeah. And which ones are just, this is what I was taught, this is what I was drilled to believe. Do I actually believe that or not?
Welcome back to the Describe Your World podcast. That was an interesting start. I'm here with my friend and coworker, Brandy. We both work at the same company. She's well-versed in accounting, which I am not. So hopefully we get a chance, I can learn a little bit about accounting over the course of the recording. I do IT, so sort of different skill sets, but I can't mess with numbers, and I'm super glad there are people like Brandy who can, because I would be out of luck. That's true. Like, there are people who have just different skill sets, so we end up helping each other. So welcome to the podcast. This is the first time as a guest, so we're excited. Kind of spontaneous, like spur of the moment. We just decided to do it just a few hours ago, and it all worked out, so that was great. How are you feeling? Are you feeling good about being on the interwebs for the world to see?
Don't everybody hate me at once.
I don't think anyone will hate you. I actually really like the potential of, someone who's, I think we're very different in a lot of ways, but I also think there are a lot of similarities that are worth like noting. And it would be very fascinating for people to learn the similarities, because both of us being from the Carolinas, I mean, me practically being from North Carolina, there are just little ties and connections that are the same. And it's always fascinating to explore that stuff. But we're also very different. Like, you can, see behind me, I have a bunch of like nerd and geek stuff. And I don't think Brandy is much of a nerd or a geek. No.
I'm a pig lover, but you can't see it because it's not on the wall right now. But
yeah.
You over my desk.
You love pigs, and I grew up right across the street from a pig farm, so it works perfectly.
Perfect.
So the way that I like to do it, we'll kind of get started with just some of your origin story, backstory, early life. So whatever you feel like sharing about growing up, if you want to talk about your parents or any experiences that are important, I think that would be a really good kind of place to jump off.
Okay. So, like you said, I'm from the Carolinas, born and raised in Waxhaw, North Carolina, from Cane Creek. It is me and my sister. She's 4 years older than me, and my parents separated for divorce when I was 11. So I kind of house hopped between my mom and my dad, middle school, beginning of high school, and then I ended up staying at my dad's and graduating in Union County. From there, I went to King's College in Charlotte and got my associate's degree in accounting. And then that journey began. So I have worked in accounting since 2004, except for like 2 years when I was in banking. So my original background is in retail accounting. And then when I came to ORC with you, I now do project accounting, which is a whole different demon. My dad remarried. They've been together for over 20 years. That tells you how old I am. And my mom remarried and divorced twice after my dad, and currently just has a dog and loves her to death. That's her new child.
That's another thing too. You guys are like way into dogs, I've noticed. Because even when we would get together, like at the office or parties and things like that, the dogs are always a part of the family. Like
we are very much pet family people in this area.
So I guess Waxhaw. So I don't know a ton about it. I mean, I know the general area, but I've never really been and spent much time there. So what was growing up there like for you? What were some of the normal like family activities?
So for me, I actually grew up in the outskirts of Waxhaw. So I grew up in the country. Anybody about that area, there's really not much. I literally grew up in between the two Cane Creeks. So there's a day park and then there's a campground. I lived right in the middle of them. So family activities weren't really family activities. It was more of a Brandy, find something to entertain yourself because you live in the middle of nowhere. But it was fun. That was where my love for pets began. I had a dog since I was little, and we did everything together. Love that dog. Best pet I've ever had. And then from there, just kept having animals. And then most of my family things were like holidays. Like we would always, my mom's family, she is one of 5 sisters. So those family gatherings were quite big.
Yeah.
Especially as they started having kids and they started having kids. But that was mostly like holidays, birthdays and stuff. We'd go over there. Most of my childhood was spent with my grandmother, my dad's mom. She owned her own beauty shop on her property. So if I got sick at school or there was a day out of school, and then all summer long, because both my parents worked, I was with her. So I was the child that spun around in the beauty shop chair and drove her bananas because I wouldn't stop spinning. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of help. And she also had a little garden behind it. So every morning we got up and went and picked the fresh produce out of the garden, and I helped her clean it and get it ready. So to this day, fresh is still the best. There's nothing like it.
It's really interesting because some of the points there are, as I said, we have some similarities, even though on the surface it might seem like we're very different. But, growing up in the outskirts of a town in the country, very similar for me, literally 5, 10, 15 miles from anything, even from town. And then the town that was nearby was extremely small. And then my mom has a beauty shop still that's attached on the property to the house. So like I spent time out in the beauty shop with my mom. Parents didn't split. I mean, I can't speak for them. I don't know that was the best idea, but they didn't split. So that's interesting. But it was a lot of, like, how can you create fun experiences for yourself? Because what are you going to do when you're that far from literally everything?
Yeah, literally. Like the closest store was 10 minutes away, and Waxhaw, the town of its own. It is a lot more populated now with businesses and things, but when I was growing up, I mean, it's still small, but like there was nothing downtown. It's a 1 street light town. So you got the bank, you got the post office, you got the neighborhood park, and you got the grocery store.
So
don't forget the Ace Hardware. You got to have the Ace Hardware in the country.
Yeah, I think if I'm thinking about McCall, which is, I guess, would have been the closest for us, it would have been maybe 10 minutes, 10-ish minutes. I think one stoplight, maybe 2. But it's like you got Mechanic Place, you've got like a couple gas stations. Maybe there's a Family Dollar now, I think, but very similar. Like it's so small, and people will ask where you're from, and I'm like, I don't even reference McCall. I'll say something like the Florence area, or I'll say something else because there's no way to indicate where I am when no one's heard of that place.
Yeah, I stopped telling people I was from Waxhaw. Like unless you're from here, and even then, half people don't know. I just say Charlotte. I'm like,
right. Yeah, and it's the same as a lot of other places. Charlotte just kind of swallows it up anyway. So, like, if you're looking at property listings for Charlotte, I mean, all the stuff like Monroe, Minion Trail, it all falls under Charlotte. So, it doesn't even make sense to identify it anymore. Yeah. So, what was like, I guess, school like? What was education? Were you pretty good in school? I mean, you're an accountant, so apparently you're good with numbers.
I actually was always a good student. Somehow I befriended almost every single teacher I ever had, even through high school and college. I've always been a good student. I didn't realize how much different school was until I went to live with my mom in middle school when they split. And the school that I went to where she lived, they were teaching stuff that I learned the previous year in my original school. So I was very bored. They actually tested me and ended up putting me in 2 AP classes because I was just above the level. And I'm like, I'm not AP. It's just, I learned this last year. Like, y'all are a year behind. So that was interesting to see. Like, I thought all schools were teaching the exact same. I did not know that there was a difference. That was crazy to me. But yeah, so I went to a different school, half of 7th grade and all of 8th grade. But other than that, I went to the schools in the Waxhaw district that I was supposed to be in. But yeah, I actually graduated from high school early, and I graduated on the honors list. I graduated on the dean's list from college. So yeah, pretty good student.
Very smart. And you seem to indicate that you were the teacher's pet often.
Yes, they loved me.
Well, so because it's the same for me. I was teacher's pet often, but I'm curious what your experience was like. Like, how did you bond with your teachers, especially in like a public school system?
I don't know, like elementary, how I bonded with them. I think they just loved me because I was so like nice, I guess. High school, it was more, I was the one that paid attention and asked questions, and especially if it was the math class, like I knew every answer. So she loved me. But I was personable. Like I showed up to class early and I was like, hey, how's your day? If they told me about their kids or their husband or wife or whatever, like I would remember and I would ask. And then I was goofy. So they were always laughing at me saying I was doing something silly. So, it's quite fun. My freshman year was kind of hard because my sister's 4 years older than me and she's the bad child. So my first year of high school, even the assistant principal knew my sister. And he was like, so are we going to have to go through this with you too? I was like, no, I'm not her. Like, I'm the opposite. He was like, we'll see. And like, a few months in, he was like, okay, I get it. He was like, I like you. I'll keep you.
Yeah. I wonder, I'm curious because you're saying things that I know about you, like personable and funny and good to be around and talk to. But, you went through a divorce or a separation pretty young, pretty early. So I wonder, did that have any kind of effect on you negatively or positively? Or is that something that kind of was separate from your development?
I don't know if it affected my personality, because my personality kind of came from very young. One of my daycare / summer programs when I was very young was connected to a old folks home. And so I spent most of my days with them. And then, like I said, growing up in school, I was with my grandmother all the time. So being around them and just, they don't really have anybody. So they love having someone come and talk to them. And like, you become like their adopted grandchild. So I kind of got that personality of always wanting to be someone that someone else could talk to or be there and just like be that happy moment for them. So when my parents went through a divorce, my mom was my favorite, because my dad, through obviously when I got older and learned everything, I now know why. But when I was younger, my dad was never there. He worked 3 jobs most of the time. And when he was there, he's not a connector. So we didn't have a relationship really. So I was like, okay, I'm going to live with my mom. That's fine. My mom took it very hard, and I ended up becoming the adult at a very young age. So I think even though my personality wasn't changed, my demeanor changed because I grew up very quickly. I was cooking dinner. I was making sure she got up for work. I was, taking care of her. She was in a very deep depression. So I grew up very quickly. So
yeah, I think there's like a level of maturity too that it can go multiple ways whenever you go through something traumatic. Like you can either be affected negatively and have your development stunted and have, this hard process of sort of rebuilding or kind of coming up with your sense of self and reestablishing that. Or you can, like you said, you can kind of grow up quickly, mature quickly, develop these like extremely valuable skills that are necessary for survival. And then those become useful later in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And they served me very well. Like, I went through college, put myself through college, I was done with college and at my first real full-time job when I was 19 years old. So, making as a 19-year-old, having to pay all your bills and take care of an apartment and find food and, car payments and everything, like most 19-year-olds ain't going to do that.
No.
So having the maturity level for me helped in that aspect. Now later in life, I am learning through self-development and therapy that, I didn't ever really get a chance to learn myself and learn who I wanted to be. So I am doing that now at almost 40. And the negative effects of the divorce, not just the divorce, but just parenting in general. I don't trust people close to me because the people closest to me have always let me down. So I'm learning how to build that trust and build those relationships and not run away like I want to or put my wall up like, I got this, I don't need you.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot to unpack in there, but I guess one of the things that I'm kind of pulling out of that is therapy is incredibly important. And it almost seems like the inverse of like normal. Well, like you said, you're kind of learning yourself really much later in life than you would have before. So does that mean that earlier there was a lot of like depersonalization and just some like the experience of just, what do I want to do? Like, I don't know because I don't know what I like to do, that kind of thing. Or did you still get a lot of, happiness and joy out of life before getting to this point?
I think I got a lot of happiness and joy out of life. Early on, it was more of I need to survive because I can't depend on anybody else. So it was focus on work, focus on maintaining a good credit, focus on paying your bills, put your head down and just keep going. So that's great in a lot of ways. Like I've made myself in a really good place. I've been successful in my career. So it's a very good thing to have. But on the other side, like when people are like, well, what do you like to do? I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. And that's so fascinating. Like that's such an interesting, like, facet of who you are. Like you're at a point where, what are your hobbies and interests? Well, those are things that you weren't able to identify when most people were. Yeah. So like that's like a challenge because now you have the resources to enjoy yourself. You just got to figure out what those things are that you want to do.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because it's like, I don't know. Yeah. We'll figure it out as we go, I guess.
One topic that I definitely wanted to make sure we hit on was, not so much friendship, because I feel like friendship is such a general like topic thing that can kind of break down into a lot of different branches, but specifically the way that you and I connected with each other, because I think it really says a lot about who I am as a person. And then it also says a lot about you, which is I don't like people and I don't have friendships. And so even working in the environment that we did, before COVID, we were in an office environment, cubicles and that kind of thing where our desks, and it was a fairly small group, especially when we started, because there were only maybe 12 to 15 people, I think, around that time in corporate. But I don't just approach people and ask them about their lives or what their hobbies and interests are. And Brandy does approach people. So for us, it kind of worked out because I would troubleshoot for people and tech support and kind of for corporate, at least I would be able to do it in person. So we just kind of slowly bonded during those exchanges.
I kept breaking stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kept pushing me, like you pushed me to open up and to push me to befriend you and to get to know you and things like that. So I just think that's something that's extremely interesting to play with, because there are people that I wouldn't be friends with unless they like invaded my space and kind of forced me to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so funny because you're now the second person to say that. My boyfriend now I've been friends with for over 6 years. We met at work. And I remember to this day when he left to go to another job, I was like, I need your phone number. And he's like, why do you need my number? I was like, because you're going to be my friend. And he was like, what? I was like, you don't have a choice about it. You're going to be my friend. I need your phone number so I can stay in touch with you.
Yeah.
And we're still friends.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And I mean, too, it's interesting because you were talking about you spent so much time like being focused on growth, development, career, things like that that aren't hobbies and interests and passions. And so kind of during that time when COVID was really settling in and we were all sent home to work from home, I kind of went into that space too for an extended period of time. Like I didn't have many ties or connections. I just really focused on like weight loss. I focused on like developing with my job, professional goals. And like, that's when I bought my house, was during that time. And I was so cut off and isolated from people and doing things, but I was doing extremely well, like from a professional standpoint, a financial standpoint. So I can really relate to that. And I feel like the only person that I was really connected to at that time was you, and really by force, because you sort of manhandled it.
It's like, I'm coming to see the new house. Give me the address.
Yeah. And it's cool too, because there are a couple of fun things, but I introduced you to Star Wars, which I'm still very proud of.
Yes. And I still watch it. I am so excited for Mandalorian coming back out. Like, I get jokes and references now, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah. It's like there's one of those little like quirks and interests that you have that you wouldn't have had. So I think those are really cool to acknowledge. But I think a lot of people are like that. You can't have it all at the same time. Like you can't have the fun, the hobbies, the interests, the passions, the professional development, the financial development, the marriage, the relationships, all of that at the same time. You kind of have to get in a lane and just develop where you can and where you have time to.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I've now looking at it, my personal relationships, whether they be friends or they be actual relationship, that's where I've suffered, because I pretty much had my wall up of, I don't trust anybody. I don't need you. I got this. And so I didn't really let people in, even though there were people around me. And because I was so focused, like even in my early 20s, like I said, I started my first job at 19. My early 20s, like friends or people around me are like, let's go to the club. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And I'm like, is it a Saturday? Because Sunday through Thursday, I got to be in bed by 9 o'clock because I got to get up for work. Friday, I got up early, so I probably don't want to stay out too late. So you got one day with me. And even then, I work a part-time job now, so because I need more money. So I don't know. So that's where I hindered. And even now, like I have a very, very small network of friends, and most of them are from high school. Like I didn't make new friends as I got older because I was so focused on just that goal. And now it's like you wake up and I'm like, okay, let's start over.
Yeah, it almost feels like, and I think too, and I mentioned this on another episode of the podcast where I was talking to one of my friends from high school, and I was like, a lot of the relationships that I have are sort of inherited relationships. Like my in-laws, those people are Catherine's family or friends that she's connected to, or maybe people that I grew up with or church family, and people that I stay in touch with more from like an obligation standpoint than people that I selected to be friends. And it's not because I don't want a network of people. It's more that I just don't have time. And from a very realistic and logical perspective, I can't have 5 to 10 people that I hang out with every week. Like when would I hang out with them? It's like, I'm focused on marriage. I'm focused on my job. I'm focused on creating something like this. I'm focused on trying to get a couple hours in a week of watching some YouTube or doing something that I enjoy doing, video game or art or whatever. And I don't have time for the rest. So, and it's unfortunate, but at the same time, I think
Yeah.
it works fine for me. I just don't know that that's for everybody. So I kind of want to ask about accounting because I think that's maybe it's a little bit insulting, but I would never choose that in a million years, like to actually do. So, what was it that inspired you or motivated you to get into it?
I tell people all the time, I'm like, you're either, well, one, you're either an office person or you're not an office person. That's the first thing. But
Right.
accounting is, and the teacher that kind of pushed me in the accounting way was a retired CPA. And she basically told me, she said, you either get it or you don't. So, and it made sense to me because I got it. But yeah, you kind of either get it or you don't. Accounting is interesting.
Hmm.
Not so much in the project accounting that I do now, but in the past, in my retail accounting, I guess you could call them puzzles. I love searching and looking and trying to find something. So that's the part of accounting that I actually find very interesting. Um, so in the retail accounting, things get posted wrong. You've got people at cash registers, people running reports, people, depending on what you do, you've got multiple different services going into one accounting system, and then you've got to kind of merge them together. So things get posted wrong,
Mm-hmm.
things don't go where they're supposed to, people skip a step, whatever the reason is. So there was a lot of puzzle putting together back when I did retail, and I really, really enjoyed that. In
Hmm.
school, I was always good at math, so accounting just kind of transitioned into that. And it just really just came natural to me when I took accounting in high school, and it just was like I had done it my whole life. It just made complete sense to me. So
Hmm.
kind of where that kind of fell into my lap.
So I guess my next question is, when you started with college, did you go to two-year school or university?
I technically went to a business college, so kind of 2 years. I only
Mm-hmm.
went for 13 months.
And how did that situation, I guess, come together? How did you choose where you wanted to go for your accounting degree?
So I didn't choose it. My dad was going to pay for my schooling, and he basically said, I've already done all the paperwork for your sister, and I know how much this costs. You can go there, or you can figure out how to pay on your own. So that's how that got chose for me.
So how do you feel about that? Are you I guess content with your college experience?
I am. There's sometimes where, like, when people talk about, living on campus, or like, the like being together and meeting people and everything, like I really didn't get that.
Yeah.
I drove to school every day, left, went to work, came home, did it again the next day. So like I saw the people in my class, but
Mm.
the experience of actually being on campus and building those bonds, I never got to do. So I kind of missed that. But given the situations that happened around that time, and what I needed to focus on, not going to school for 4 years actually paid off, because I needed to get a job very quickly and learn how to support myself. And so I was able to do that very fast.
Yeah, and I was going to touch on that a bit because that was kind of my experience. I went to both. I went to a 2-year college and I got my associate degree that was sort of like a general studies degree because it was just associate of arts. And then I transferred that to university for 2 years and I got my bachelor of arts in English and creative writing. But the problem is when you split your college up into two different parts, you get the same experience where I didn't really bond with anybody at either of them. I commuted to both of them, didn't live on campus, didn't get involved in any of the parties or activities. When I started at university, I was a junior, and all of the cliques and connections and circles were already pieced together.
Mm-hmm.
So I have friends from college, but very, very few. Whereas a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people have this great networking experience and they have all of
Mm-hmm.
these connections and people that they still talk to. And I'm like, I kind of miss that because I didn't have time to build
Mm-hmm.
that.
Straight out of college, there was a few of us, and again, it was just in my class. I didn't really meet anybody outside of my class.
Mhm.
Um, for a little while, a few of us kind of stayed in touch, but then it was just life moved on, and I think I'm still friends with one of them on social media, but other than that, I don't really talk to anyone. The one person I kept in contact up with the most was actually my professor. As I told you, I make friends with my teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Like my closest ties from college are professors. 100%.
Yeah, I stayed in touch with my professor for years. I haven't talked to him in a while because he retired and he was kind of doing his own thing. So, yeah, I actually kept in touch with him for a very long time.
So if you could go back and redo it and you didn't have the burden of growing up quickly and paying for bills, do you think you would have still done accounting or do you think you would have done something more in a different avenue?
I think I still would have done some type of accounting. To this day, I only have one regret in life. I think that everything happens for a reason. I think I learned something from everything that I go through. The only thing that I regret is when I was in high school, I didn't go to the Air Force. And I
Hmm.
would have got my schooling from them. And I honestly believe, knowing me and knowing how I am, I probably would have done something financial wise in the Air Force. I probably
Hmm.
would have never left. Um, but that is the one thing. So I still would have done accounting. Like I said, math was like my only real thing that I got in school, even though I was a good student and I made good grades. Math was the one thing that like I excelled at. It just came to me. I understood it. It made sense. And so it would have done something with finances in some kind of way. Um,
Hmm.
just don't know where that would have landed me. So
So you were good at math. I had the opposite experience. I tried to avoid math. Whenever I started my college journey, I was like, how many do I have to take and what's the easiest one that I can take? And they took my SAT scores and just placed me in college algebra, which there are so many other maths that I probably could have done,
hmm
but I'm toughed through college algebra. And then I made it a point not to take any other maths because like I
hmm
don't want to do it. I'm okay with it, and I did have some of it in chemistry, but it's not my wheelhouse at all. I just numbers don't really make sense for my brain as they do for
hmm
yours.
yes. And
I was super
taking,
happy to have classes where I could write papers. I could write papers all day every day.
and see, that's where, nope, I'm not writing. I'm not speaking. No, I barely read. If you talk to me long enough, I don't have proper English.
I think you're doing
No,
really well. I
I,
don't know if we had this conversation, but I definitely talk about it with other people. Like, because as an English major, one of the questions that people will ask is like, do you pay attention to grammatical errors and like mistakes and things like that? Actually, I do. Like when I talk to people, I hear it all the time. But I've gotten better over the years of not pointing it out because it just
mhm,
really offends people and hurts their feelings.
yes. So you avoided math class. I avoided English class.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, what's the
So that's
bare
like
minimum I have to do to pass this?
it's like one of the one big deviations that we have thus far is
hmm
just the parts of our brains that are strongest.
But they say opposites. So I've got
Yeah.
that side, you've got that side. We're one together.
And it clearly worked for ORC because like the technical side of things, like I obviously did well with, and then the personable personality, the connection, the interaction part, you took care of that part. So
Yes,
that blend works for people. It's just a matter of getting the right people into the right situation. But
definitely.
I've always been that way though. I mean, you've described yourself before, I think, as like shy, but you don't come across as shy at all. Like you can befriend anybody.
No, I am shy until I get comfortable with someone. So usually work is a different atmosphere than most things because I kind of don't get the luxury of not speaking to you unless I just don't ever have to deal with you. But of course, like I said, when we started, I broke a lot of stuff, so I had to deal with you quite often. But yeah, once I get comfortable with somebody, I say I'm like night and day. It's like the light switches, and it's like, here I am, welcome aboard. Hope you're ready. But yeah, outside, when people meet me, like I don't approach people, I don't approach strangers. But if someone will communicate with me, I'm very open to that. Like I'll keep a conversation. I'll keep, communicating with you. I'm just usually very shy in the beginning. So I kind of like just in the corner, like, okay.
Where does that come from? Why are you afraid to kind of throw yourself out there? Because I mean, I understand what it is for me. I think for me, it's an extremely rigid, logical opinion of just human beings. But I'm curious if there's anything that made you feel, like you wanted to retreat.
I don't know exactly what it is. I probably need to touch on that in therapy. But because when I do get comfortable with someone, as you well know, I'm an open book. Like I don't filter, I don't hide. I am me. So I usually take that time to get to know somebody, basically to see if I can trust them. Because I know once I start talking, it's just, here it is. This is me. You're going to know everything. Welcome aboard. So if I don't trust you, there's a wall there. There's a barrier that I'm like, I keep it very professional or very short with you. I'm still pleasant. I'm still nice. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but there's a different line that I toe with people that I just don't get that trusty feeling from. Mm-hmm. So that's usually where the shyness comes from is I'm an observer and I'm reading people. And once I get my read on people, then I'm like, okay, you can get to know the real me.
I wonder, do you connect more quickly with people who come from like a similar situation, similar circumstances? Is it easier?
I've never paid attention to that, but now that you say that, I think a lot of the people, besides, like I said, my friends from high school, because, I mean, besides living in the same place and going to the same school, like, none of us really have anything in common. I actually have a very diverse set of friends. Mm-hmm. But the people that I've made friends with since I've gotten, like, out and out of school and, like, my adult life, I think most of them do have some similarities. I kind of attach to that. But more or less it's the person. Like if you're a real person, I know that sounds weird, but there's so many fakes and so many like, I'm going to smile in your face and then I'm going to stab you in the back as soon as you turn around. Mm-hmm. So if I find somebody that's really down to earth, really real, and like an honest person, like that's who I connect with, which is kind of why I have such a diverse set of friends, is because I get to know the person. We don't have to have everything in common. You and I are a great example. Like we don't have to have everything in common. We have our differences, but at the core, I think we mirror each other, and that's what I look for in a person. And I've had that quite a bit. And the people that really get to know me, and they know how I am, and they know where I'm coming from. But the people that don't, they're like, you're so mean. Like, you're just so, and I'm like, actually, I'm not. I'm just very honest and upfront, and like I'm not filtering me. I'm very big on what you see is what you get. This is but you're not going to wake up in 5 years and be like, who are you? Like, still the same person I was then, just older and grayer.
And I don't know if you deal with this, but I definitely struggle a lot with like the political correctness, the woke culture, the kind of like modern take on let's sugarcoat everything. Let's make everybody like feel a certain way. And like, let's pay a really close attention to each individual's feelings and opinions. It's very difficult for me personally because as much as I care about other people and want them to be happy and want them to not be offended, I can't avoid offending people sometimes. Like, and sometimes that's because of faith. Sometimes that's because of like a political stance or a social stance or whatever. And it kind of bleeds over into things like work or personal life or church or whatever. Because, you know, nowadays, if you say something offensive in their mind, at least, it's, you know, it's a huge problem. And it's like, I can't avoid doing that sometimes.
Yeah. I haven't really dealt with it much. I'm not, luckily, with the company that I keep, I'm not really around a lot of the younger generation. So I'm not dealing with it. But, yeah, same as you. Like, you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
Somebody in some way is going to get offended no matter what. So it's like, just know where it's coming from and know that our differences are what make us who we are. So all the sensitivity and the everybody's got to be so open and like, no, we're all different. That makes us who we are. But I still have my opinions just like you have your opinions.
Yeah.
That's fine. Just it's what's behind it. Like, are you just stating your opinion and it's like, you do you, but this is how I feel? Or are you doing it from a hatred point? Are you doing it from a mean, vindictive, hurtful place? That's the difference for me. I'm like, nothing I do is hateful or vindictive or anything. It's just, I have my thoughts, my opinions, my beliefs. Like you said, we grew up, church, family, you know, what we were raised in. And it's like, this is how I am. But you be you how you want to be. This is my opinion, though. So
I think the problem, though, and maybe it's something that you can address, and once you learn the answer, come back to me with it. But I think the problem is whenever you have such a strong foundation of core beliefs and opinions, kind of like, and maybe a Southern thing, maybe it's not, maybe it's everywhere. But I think people who grow up with extremely strong core values have the problem later in life because we're the ones who have to change it, right? Like everybody else, they're offended and it's okay if we get offended, but it's not okay if they get offended. So we're asked to change those core things, or at least shift ourselves to sort of blend in with whatever the predominant value or core belief is. And so I don't really know how to fix that or change that or make that work, because it seems like the result is we get pushed farther and farther away from more people, you know, and it's not being accepted as much as others. You know, we have church people or, you know, the way we were raised, like living with certain values. There's a very tiny little group that we fit in, and we don't really fit in other groups. And so that's what I'm struggling to figure out.
I'm currently trying to figure that out, not necessarily in other people, but in myself. That has been my journey of 2022, is in finding myself. I've been trying to find what of those core values that I was raised in are actually mine. Yeah. And which ones are just, this is what I was taught, this is what I was drilled to believe. Do I actually believe that or not? But in general, I have found that as long as I'm me, people that are going to be who I want to be around are going to migrate towards me. So I don't edit.
You don't edit, you don't filter.
I'm not very good at that. It gets me in hot water sometimes.
I'm definitely getting better at it. I'm definitely, because I study a lot. Like I watch a lot of debates, a lot of streams, a lot of conversations, and trying to absorb information, just because I think educating ourselves really helps a lot. And at least if I don't agree with it, I can understand the other side on a lot of topics. So I think that's really helpful. I'm getting better with being social and interacting and engaging, but it's so much work. Like I just don't want to. Just leave me alone.
No. Come out the house.
So what role does faith play for you? So I understand we went to church together before, like we're both people of faith. So has that been pretty constant since childhood?
Yes, I was raised in church every Sunday morning, night, Wednesday night, Bible study, revival week, the whole nine. um, when I was 16 or 17, and I had the ability to say no, I stopped going to church.
Okay.
Not because my faith, but more or less just like, I was like, I would feel like I live at the church. This is a lot. Like, can I breathe? Plus, being a teenager and, all that, being a rebel. My faith is an ongoing challenge for me. Just because I don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very much I want to poke holes in the things where it's like, you're supposed to just have faith. You're just supposed to believe. And I'm like, I need more than that. I need a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
I very much believe that there is a higher power, excuse me. I believe in God. It is not that I think there's a Buddha sitting around somewhere. No offense to anybody that loves Buddha. I do believe God, Jesus. I believe that he died on the cross. I believe all of that. It's how it translates to modern day is where I have a problem. So one of my big things is, I believe in love is love. I usually date outside of my race, which is very, very, you don't do this. It is not allowed. It is in the Bible. But where is it in the Bible? Yeah. And how does that translate into modern times? Because the only scripture I've ever gotten quoted, and I don't know scriptures by quotes, but is something about the tribes don't intermingle.
Mm.
Okay, well that was back then. Yeah. We all intermingled now. So how do you tell me that mine, and I get caught up in the fact that they look at it as face value. So as long as we're both white, it's fine. But what if they're English? What if they're Italian? What if they're, that technically is a different tribe. So why aren't those made as a thing instead of just, we're a different shade of color?
Yeah.
No, we're still human. We still bleed red. And as far as I know from the Bible, we either are all going to heaven or hell. So why that I get very caught off on that. And then of course in church there's always the hypocrites, I'll say.
The hypocrites.
The people that like to just be there and be seen. And I just have a very big issue with that. And my aunt is very, very much in church and everything. She's like, you just need to go to church for you and have your faith with God, and it's all about you. You don't need to worry about everybody else. But when the pastor is one of the ones that I'm thinking of, I can't believe anything he says. Yeah. I can't respect him. So now I don't want to go to church. I can have my relationship with God and never go to church. Mm-hmm. I fully believe that. I like church. I like going to church. I like the community and everything that you get from church. But I don't have to go to church to have a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And when I don't respect the person that I'm looking at that's supposed to be teaching me, I don't believe anything you say. So you can't tell me what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to have my own relationship.
I think the one thing that really kind of resounds and is kind of impactful that I was hearing is, the piece about the way scriptures are quoted. And it's such an interesting thing. And I would really be curious to know if this happens everywhere or if it's just a Southern thing. Mm-hmm. Because the way, and it's kind of funny because the way that people like us are sort of taught and raised by our parents is by getting scripture quoted. It's like, if you want to learn a new facet or nugget of wisdom about life, I'm going to quote the scripture to you. Mm-hmm. So as a great example, I'm sure you've heard this one because I'm sure you've heard them all, but someone who doesn't like tattoos, you hear, don't put a mark on your body. That's a scripture. That gets quoted. I'm like, well, what's the context of the scripture? And they're talking about burial rituals. They're talking about the way people are buried and the way that they're like treated with a level of respect. But there's also scripture that talks about, and there's historical evidence of God's people having tattoos, because that's how they identified their tribe. They had tattoos on their body to let them know where to go. And because when you were traveling in for 40 years, you know, it was hard to keep track of your family and all that stuff. So it's like, what's up, guys? Future Travis here. When you're in the moment and you're having a conversation, sometimes it's difficult to be extremely detailed and extremely precise about what you're saying, and some of the details might get lost in the flow of the talk. So when we talk about the verses out of Leviticus that discuss tattoos, I just wanted to quickly address those. So Leviticus 19 does directly state, it warns against cutting the body and tattooing the body. So a couple notes about that really quickly. During the time, just for context, a historical context, during the time, it was really common for people to get tattoos of pagan gods, deities on their body, which is what we're talking about, God's people at the time coming out of Egypt as slaves and receiving this new law from God through daily practices and rituals to observe. So it's really important to note that whenever it's talking about tattoos and the burial rites that I mentioned in the episode, it's really discussing things that might have picked up in Egypt, particularly things regarding other gods. And that's in context what he's talking about versus just general tattoos. And it's kind of clear because the very thing that ends the verse, the follow-up to that is, I am the Lord, or I am Yahweh, depending on your translation. So it's pretty clear that from context and from the rest of the verse that what God's really emphasizing is, you know, don't put things on your body that are referencing another deity or another god. You know, these pagan rituals and practices are not going to work. So just a little bit of extra detail about this talk and just to kind of fill in some of the gaps. The other thing that I wanted to very quickly and very briefly mention is when I'm talking about God's people moving in the wilderness for 40 years after leaving Egypt, and I talk about identifying one another via their tattoos, what we understand is from historical evidence is that the Egyptians would have tattooed God's people with a mark that demonstrates that they were slaves, you know, because they would want to identify those people as workers or, you know, different in society in some way. So it's pretty clear that God's people were tattooed and identified as slaves in that way. So after they left Egypt and they were in the wilderness, this practice would have, the tattoos wouldn't have gone anywhere. They would have still been there. So it would have been really easy for them to identify each other as they're traveling. So I just want to jump in sort of post-conversation to make a couple of those points a little more clear and add a little more detail about them, just so I don't have issues later. Like if somebody watches, they're like, you know, that's probably not right. And they want to add more context. And if you have comments and things like that, please leave them in the comment section. I'd love to read them and we can continue the conversation there. Thanks for watching. Back to the talk. So it's like when I'm 6 or 7, that makes plenty of sense. And I'm like, okay, cool. Tattoos are bad because scripture said don't mark your body.
Yeah.
But then whenever I'm like 25 and I'm reading and I'm learning and I'm understanding what culture and society was like at that time and the context of the scripture, I'm like, I don't know that I believe that anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard for people who come from that kind of environment with people teaching things that way because like you have to understand so much more than just what that one verse says.
Yeah.
But there's a whole generation of people who would just be super angry about something like that.
Yeah. And that's where I run into problems is I'm usually faced with that older generation and it's just the one way you read it and that's it. And I'm like, no, that I don't think that's what that meant. I really don't.
Yeah. And it's tough too, because a lot of people who are from the outside looking in, who are people who don't have a relationship with God or who aren't in church, they're really looking for answers. And the kind of answers we're giving them are really poor answers. You know, like we're not explaining from a scientific perspective why we believe there's a God. We're just slinging scripture at them in a very aggressive, hypocritical way and hoping that they're heard enough that they'll just kind of bow at it, you know, and kind of just go with it. And that kind of hatred and that kind of harshness is why they don't join the church.
Why they don't want to go to
Yeah, and that's why they hate Christians. And so I read a book in college called Habits of the Heart, and they were talking about there's like 100,000 different Christianities in the U.S. because each person has an individual perspective of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's a problem, because you're looking for answers and you're looking for confirmation and truth and objective truth at that. And
Mm-hmm.
there's 100,000 different versions.
Exactly. Yeah. Which one?
Right. And it's because we're human and we're fallible and we just want to believe what we believe. And if I can find a scripture that supports my argument, we're done. I'm good.
Yeah. And that's it. I quoted it. We're done. End of subject.
So that it's a problem, and it makes being a person of faith very hard because, like, you have a very personal relationship with God. My wife and I, we practice our faith a certain way. We pray together. We believe the same things. We do attend church. There's a church we really like that we attend, and so far there haven't been problems with doctrine. But that stuff's going to happen at some point, and it's going to come up, and people ask questions, and you have to be prepared. And it's a whole craziness.
Yeah, that is one part of my faith that I've never really. I have a very big don't talk about religion and don't talk about politics.
Mm-hmm.
My life goes a lot smoother that way.
Yeah. It's
now,
interesting.
Obviously, when we get into the nitty gritty and I get one-on-one, like with me and you or me and with other friends, like that's different. But as a general out, that's where you're going to run into arguments and problems, and it's a mess. So it's like, till you get to know me and who I am and we get more personal, just nope. Are you religious? Yep. Keep moving. Keep moving.
Yeah. It's part of a bigger conversation, and maybe we could come back and do a whole talk just about sort of the hypocrisy of modern Christianity, because I feel bad that, I don't even feel equipped to have conversations with atheists that are convincing, that can lead them toward being people of faith, because I don't have any good examples to point them to.
Yeah.
I think it sucks. And even our preacher was talking about recently the story of Jesus and the woman at the well. Obviously, Jesus talking about her being a person from a different area. He wasn't supposed to be talking to her. Her being a person who would have multiple like male partners, and who knows what color they were or what race or whatever, doesn't really matter. But like, he wasn't even supposed to talk to her. Like, he shouldn't have even been associating with her. So if my example is the savior that I have is okay to intermingle with people that you're not supposed to intermingle with, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to feel pretty good about that. But it is frustrating.
it is very frustrating. Yes. So that is my...
That's your Christian rant for the day.
That's my Christian rant for the day. I'll get off my soapbox and continue.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on, like any topics? One other thing before we get to my 10 questions that I have to ask. So Super Bowl. So I think you're the only person that I might be in the near future discussing sports with, because you're an Eagles fan. So congrats, because the Eagles are there.
Thank you.
Jalen Hurts, extremely proud of. Followed him in college and had a lot of ups and downs, but definitely a deserving quarterback to be in the Super Bowl.
Yes. I am very excited. I am actually very sad because Super Bowl is always the weekend of my birthday. So I thought I was going to be watching it on Sunday. And then my boyfriend informed me that they changed the schedule and added an extra season game. So the Super Bowl was moved a week. I was like, oh, so I don't get an early birthday present, which I was very excited about. Because I believe the one and only time that we have went to the Super Bowl and we won was also on the Sunday, and my birthday was on Monday.
Oh, okay.
So I literally stayed up all night. It was like going crazy because I was like, yes, I was like, it's the best birthday present ever.
And it's very interesting too. And I don't know how in touch with like sports and individual athletes you are, but Tom Brady retiring this week, and then the conversations about Aaron Rodgers and where he's going to play, I feel like are going to kind of eclipse the whole like Super Bowl and the ramifications of that. It's kind of annoying because they're both very diva-like to me. So I think
worry.
it's way...
The Eagles fans in Philly will make sure that we get the spotlight back on us, because they like climbing light poles and, gridlocking the entire downtown. Don't worry, we'll be in the spotlight again because we're crazy.
I love that it's Andy Reid and the Chiefs and Andy Reid's former team. I love that there are two black quarterbacks for the first time. Like there are a lot of really cool little storylines that are going to be a part of it.
There are two brothers going the first time.
Two brothers
are going. Yeah, there's a lot coming out of this Super Bowl. It is really, really it's really neat. It's great to be a part of it, and I'm so excited that my team gets to be a part of it. I'm so excited.
What are you going to predict for the score? What do you think? Where's that going to go?
I'm not good at that, and I probably would suck at it. But considering that the playoff game the conference game that we just did, I really thought it was going to be neck and neck. Mm-hmm. Like I did not expect a blowout game with San Francisco. I'm actually very mad about that because one of the things I kept saying was I was very excited to finally have a real competitor and somebody that's not in our conference. Mm-hmm. So I was like, we don't play San Francisco, but once every 4 or 5 years. And they've had an awesome season. So I was like, yes, we're going to get to play a great team. And I was even like, if we lose, I'm fine because I want that competition. Like I want to say I'm the best because I beat the best. Mm-hmm. So that blowout game just made me so upset. I am just so just annoyed by that because it shouldn't have went that way. Mm. So I am hoping that the Chiefs game is going to be an actual game. I think we'll win by a field goal.
Okay,
I have
fair.
No idea what the score will be, but I think we'll win by a field goal. I don't think we'll win by a touchdown.
I think unfortunately, and I would like Philadelphia to win too. My problem is I think that Cincinnati and Kansas City were the two best teams. And the problem, like you said, being in the NFC is there's not a lot of competition. And sorry for the Cowboys fans. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm not going to treat you like with kid gloves because Dallas is still not a good team. So unfortunately, even though you won a lot of games, you're still not good. But I haven't seen the Eagles beat a quality team really convincingly. So I think Cincinnati and Kansas City are the two best teams, and I think that was kind of like the Super Bowl in my mind when they played, and that was a tight game.
That's what I expected from our game, and it just went the complete. I was like, what just happened?
So either Philadelphia is going to completely destroy them, and they're by far the best team, or they're going to really struggle to score, and so. I don't know which way it's going to go.
It's going to be very. I do like the way Jalen Hurts has rounded our offense. Our defense is hands down one of the best. It always is. So we're good at holding the other team. Our offense is what struggles.
Yeah.
As long as we get a good powerhouse quarterback that can hold the team, our offense is amazing. And Jalen Hurts has done that this year. He is really, really good. So I'm really excited to watch the game.
And they gave him two of the fastest receivers. They gave him, Quez Watkins, and then Devontae.
Yeah.
I think those are the two speedy guys. But yeah, two brothers, two black quarterbacks, lots of storylines. So,
and this is only our second time ever going to the Super Bowl, and the first time we won. So
Oh, that means they're going to win. They're definitely going to win now.
Oh no. We don't get there very often, so.
Well, before we wrap up, I'm gonna, if you're down, I want to ask you my 10 questions, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. But it's been a good conversation, so I have to come back and do a Christian theology debate.
Okay.
So, what's your favorite word?
Huh?
Is that your favorite? I mean, I guess HUH is a word that works.
According to Tony, that's my favorite word. So,
what's your least favorite word?
A word I don't say.
Okay.
It starts with the N.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think context of the conversation, I think we got it.
Yeah, I don't like that word at all.
What excites you?
My Eagles winning.
Okay. You might be really excited in a couple weeks.
You know me. Food excites me. Come on.
What upsets you?
How do I put that in words? Unfair treatment, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
I don't like people that don't, like I said, I see a person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't judge based on anything else, height, color, condition, anything. Like, I get to know a person. So I don't like people that are just unfair for no reason.
Judgmental, yeah.
Yes.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love the dinner bell.
Sure. That works. If there is one.
My food timer going.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Scratching on a chalkboard.
Fair. That's pretty common. I'd say about 50% of people have that answer.
Horrible sound.
What motivates
People
you to
chewing
act?
loudly. Sorry.
Oh yeah. My wife has like misophonia, and she hates the sound of like food and being chopped and chewed.
Too quieter.
What motivates you to act every day when you wake up?
To act?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was like, I'm not acting.
What motivates you to do when you wake up?
My food habit, and I need money to sustain that food habit.
There's like a little theme, a thread running through.
If you know me, you know what that theme is.
What profession other than your own would you like to try?
That's a good question.
I'm waiting on it. There's an obvious answer here.
I don't want to be a food taster because I don't know.
No. I was going to say chef, but
I don't want to be a chef. It's
okay.
too much. It's too much pressure. I don't want to come up with meal plans and food. No, I don't want to do that.
Mm.
I want to be one of those people that travel all around the world and like document it.
You could be a content creator.
Yes, them people.
Like a vlogger.
Yes. Pay me to go travel. I'm down for that.
Start a channel. We'll start watching. What profession would you not like to try?
Cleaning out porta potties.
So specific. Is that too dirty for you?
Yes, this is disgusting. Or sewers. I want to clean them out.
All of the above. Filth, anything regarding like dirt, that works.
No.
Last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates? That's what you want him to say. Ooh.
Oh. If I made it to heaven. Ooh. Just being mean. Be like, wow, that was a fun ride.
That's fair. You just hope he's entertained by it all.
Yes.
Well, you did well. You survived all 10 questions. I thank you for coming on. It's been really fun.
Thank you for having me.
Good conversation. I'm glad it was spontaneously put together. So what I'd like to do, just for context for people listening, is once I get to a certain point in episodes, I think I'm kind of around 20 at this point, but I want to kind of pivot and change direction with the podcast and do like debates or like pick one topic and just kind of go back and forth. So maybe we can do like a Christian debate or something and argue. Okay. Make people really mad.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
So I'll let you have the last word. Shout yourself out, whatever you want to say, as long as it's nothing extremely vulgar or hateful.
Well, we just learned I won't do that. I don't like that. I don't have anything to say. I'm glad you invited me. This was a lot of fun. It actually was less stressful than I thought it was going to be. It was a lot of fun though. I enjoyed it. Thank you. So,
And it's cool because now if anybody ever asks, who are you, you just send them the link.
they're like, I got a podcast. Go check it out.
There you go. All right. Well, that's a wrap.